Okay. Hello, welcome and thank you for joining in person or online our World Circular Economy Accelerator session on increasing the circularity of fashion. This is a session co-organized by the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, the United Nations Environment Programme, MedWaves, the European Commission General Directorates for Environment and for International Partnership, and the Switch to Green facility. My name is Alexander Haralamus. I lead the Switch to Green facility, and I will be moderating this session on circular fashions. So why would the textiles and fashion being discussed at the World Circular Economy Forum? Let me give you some statistics that would probably clarify the link. I'll start with the positive ones. The textiles and fashion sector employ over 75 million people worldwide. And if we do count in the impact on work across the global value chains, these numbers raise up to 300 million, according to some estimates. At the same time, we're talking about a sector which has which is a business of about 2.5 trillion euro. So it's huge. And it would be great if these were the basic statistics that I could provide you about the sector, but unluckily there is a negative side as well. What is the negative side? Well, the textile sector is responsible for about 10% of carbon emissions, global carbon emissions. It's a very polluting sector, a sector that is in its linear format heavily dependent on water consumption, and creates a lot of waste. In the EU alone, almost 6 million tons of textiles are discarded every year. There are social challenges as well. This should be noted here, particularly linked with the working conditions in the textile sector. So how can circularity in the fashion industry minimize or help minimize these negative impacts and at the same time preserve the benefits that the sector has in terms of employment and growth? Let's invite our distinguished panel to ask them questions and learn more about these aspects. So I would like to invite Mr. Gaëtan Ducrot, International Relations Officer in charge of bilateral and regional environmental cooperation with Africa and South Asia in the European Commission Directorate General for Environment. Ms. Hattie Cooper, Director of Programs and Services, in charge of thematic and sector-focused portfolio covering textiles, finance, and the built environment. Ms. Esther Goodwin-Brown, leader of the Circular Jobs Initiative, a knowledge center within circular economy that aims to ensure that the transition to the circular economy is positive for work and for workers. Welcome to the panel. And together with us, we have online Ms. Ferda Yoluta-Sisevi, a consultant which has recently worked on circular business models and circular strategies in the textile industry, including with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Welcome, Ferda. With us is also Elina Brinkeberg, environmental manager at Nudie Jeans, a denim brand offering free repair services and sales of reused denim. And it's a company collaborating with the SwitchMed program. Please give a round of applause to our panelists. Well, thanks again for joining the panel. I would like to start with something we heard in the morning by the EU ambassador, but also in the previous 2 days. And that is basically the aspiration of the European Union to lead by example and have a leading role in global efforts for a just transition to a low carbon and circular economy. But the question here is, does this ambition also include the textiles and fashion industry? So I turn to you, Gaëtan. Could you please tell us more about the EU efforts to reduce the environmental footprint of fashion and textiles, both in Europe and globally?
Thank you, Alexander. Indeed, I mean, you provided some of the very worrying figures on the environmental footprint of the fashion industry, and this is definitely also a very important source of concern on the EU side, with the conception of textile being on average the fourth highest pressure on the environment and climate change in the EU, and also the importance of the size for the economy of the EU, with more than 1.5 million people being employed in the sector inside the EU, and 160,000 companies being working on the aspect. And this is the reason why, as part of the EU Circular Economy Action Plan, which is really the footprint of circular economy policies on the EU side, there was also an adoption of earlier this year of an EU strategy for sustainable and circular textile. I can maybe tell you a few words about what this strategy entails. It has basically four main elements. The first one is around really making sustainable and circular textile the norm in the EU. So we have, as part of this Circular Economy Action Plan, a new regulation on sustainable product regulation, which will develop eco-design requirements to foster, to make textile more durable, more reusable, repairable, some criteria around fiber-to-fiber recyclability for textiles. So this eco-design regulation will be implemented through more focus on specific sector, which have the more environmental footprints, and work is currently ongoing to design and to look at those textile that we should prioritize under the first program on this regulation. So that's the first part. Making sustainable and circular textile the norm. The second objective is to better also inform and empower the consumers, because we know that it's not always easy to identify what are the real environmental footprint of a clothes we're buying. So as part of this package, the Commission is also intending to work on the digital product passport for textile, which will be providing mandatory information on the textile, on the circularity aspect of the clothes, or on the textile. It will also review the labeling regulation on textile, which at the moment we will require that the textile that are sold on the EU market will carry specific labels to identify the fiber composition. And the third element of the strategy is about integrating the producer responsibility dimension with new EPR schemes for the textile. That will be a useful tool for the collection of waste, and to incentivize more sustainable product design that promotes circularity. So all this, there will be new extended producer responsibility schemes that will be implemented, proposed with a harmonized way inside the EU, with eco-modulation of fees. And this will be proposed in 2023, next year. And the fourth element of the strategy on which the EU is working is also to work on the sustainability of the global value chains. This is really an important element. You mentioned the figures around how much textile trade in the textile is a global issue. So the Commission also intends to further work on a range of support action that will promote sustainability. I guess we'll talk about it in this session, but these are a few of the main elements on EU policies.
Thank you, Gaetan. It's very encouraging to see that there are policy developments at all fronts, very specific also to the textile sector. I wonder, what about the implementation of these policies? So I turn to you, Hati, basically because you work with circular economy, and circular economy is involved in the EU-supported Switch to Circular Economy Value Chains project, and that project is directly related to the implementation of policy, basically EU policies. So what do you think that, how does your work in this project is actually affecting the implementation of these policies?
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, we're delighted to be partnering on the Switch to Circular Economy Value Chains project with UNIDO, Chatham House, and the European Investment Bank, and of course funded by the Commission and the Government of Finland. Switch to Circular Economy Value Chains is a 5-year project that is really designed to accelerate the global transition towards circular value chains in 3 main value chains: plastics and packaging, textiles and garments, and ICT and electronics. And I think Patrick in the session before this alluded to the holistic and quite radical nature of this program, in the sense that we're really looking at working with EU multinationals and their suppliers in low-income countries to identify, test, and ultimately scale circular economy pilots. And I think what's also so interesting about this is we're not just talking about creating industrial pilots, but also really focused on creating the enabling environment around these pilots to ensure that this initial 5-year project is really highly replicable and is continued to be scaled both in the geographies where we're working, but also ultimately globally. And the pilots, just to give you a bit of an example that we're working on in Bangladesh in the textiles value chain, are twofold. So on one hand, we're really looking at one pilot which is focused on the adoption of circular fibers, so cotton and polyester, and building the capacity of local stakeholders to be able to reintegrate those fibers back into their processes. And the second pilot is really looking at how you can encourage large-scale collaboration to enhance the recycling capabilities of those suppliers in that country. I think from the perspective of circular economy, the organization that I work with, we're very much focused on the enabling environment, along with Chatham House working on policy. We'll be working on the capacity building of local business development providers to ensure that the work we're doing within the pilot, but also around the pilot, ensures that the continuation of these kind of activities become highly bankable, and then of course lead to this global transition that we're looking to realize. And I'm delighted to hear that the European Commission is also very much focused on the global dimension, and we're not just looking at the European Circular Economy Action Plan within the European borders, but also very much a focus on enabling this global transition.
Thank you, Patty. That's quite innovative to see that you're working with multinational companies, EU multinationals, and across and along, I should say, their value chain of suppliers. I understand that there is quite a support for the SMEs in hand. I'm wondering if we can extend that support, or we can replicate, let's say, that model and these approaches also beyond the ones directly benefiting from the project. So for that, I would like to turn to you, Ferda, because I know that you have experience also with SMEs, working with the World Sustainable Business Council. So could you tell us a few more words about what's happening outside this project to other SMEs, according to your experience? And basically, if there are what we would call circular business models within textile sector?
Okay, thank you, Alexander, and good afternoon to everybody. Yes, I've been working on circularity and circular business models with World Business Council for Sustainable Development, WCEF2022, and especially with its Turkish local partner, WCEF2022 Turkey, for a long time. And through the circular economy platform of Turkey, which is jointly managed by WCEF2022 Turkey and the EBRD since 2016, I've gained lots of experience with different sizes of companies, including SMEs. And textile and garments industry has always been one of the major sectors that we also prioritize. In that regard, I think Turkey would be a good example, playing a key role in the global value chains, being, for example, the 5th largest exporter in the world, and achieving this with a network of companies consisting mainly of SMEs. I should also note that more than 60% of the textile and garments export of Turkey is to the European Union countries. In that sense, the European Circular Economy Action Plan and the specific actions and strategies on textiles is becoming more and more important each day, not only for large companies, but also for SMEs that are in the production value chains. Considering also what Gretchen has just explained, it's becoming even more obvious that for maintaining competitiveness and the existing market shares and for creating new opportunities, new markets, SMEs need to be more sustainable and circular. They have already started facing with the increasing demand for higher recycled contents in yarns, in fabrics. And this also triggers the textile waste recycling, for which there is already a significant capacity and infrastructure in Turkey, especially for mechanical recycling of post-production wastes. This is actually a growing sector in which SMEs are playing a key role, especially in collection, sorting, recycling, and also yarn manufacturing. We can see very good examples of collaborations between SMEs and large companies. For example, a large producer working with a recycling company for closing the loop by converting its own production wastes into recycled fiber and using it directly in its production process and conducting the necessary R&D work jointly with the recycler for optimizing this process in all aspects. Another good example would be a denim company with which we worked last year for measuring and assessing their circularity by using the CTI, Circular Transition Indicators tool, developed by WCEF2022, and preparing a roadmap for improving their circularity level. It's particularly a good example, I think, because this company does not have its own production facilities. It works with a network of subcontractors, which are, of course, SMEs. And the production of denim materials takes place at these subcontractor factories. And the circularity assessment study started a process for the company to work more closely with the subcontractors to collect and process circularity-related data to improve the production and waste valorization practices, etc. And such examples clearly show that it's really important for SMEs to understand what's happening in the overall value chain, what are the circularity-related gaps and needs, and how they can adapt to or comply with all these, how they can be a better choice for their clients and become even more competitive.
Right. Thank you, Ferda. I understand your message that the market forces and demand are actually opening the appetite for SMEs to learn more about circularity and how they can implement circular economy approaches in their businesses. But let's zoom in now to a real business case. So we have a real business case with us. We have Elena. So Elena, I turn to you to tell us some more about UNIDO jeans and why UNIDO jeans is circular, and basically also how you decided to embark on circularity as an SME company.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Very nice to be part of this panel. I'm happy to be able to speak about how we are working. Well, from the very, very start, UNIDO jeans started in 2001, so we are not that old yet. But one of the reasons for Maria, one of the founders of UNIDO jeans, to actually start the company was that she had a vision that she wanted to make products and jeans that were made in a good quality, that were made under fair working conditions, but also made in a sustainable fiber. So that means organic cotton for us. We've also wanted from the very start, wanted to work with a very transparent production. So we know exactly where our garments are made. We have quite a consolidated supply chain with few subcontractors. And when we are using subcontractors, we need to approve them. So we need to know where our garments are made. So to take responsibility for the company's impact have always been a ground focus for us. It's always been how we are working. And therefore also to work with circularity have been sort of a natural development in connection to that. And it actually started in the stores. As I mentioned, we are not that old, and we a couple of years ago weren't as big as we are today either. We had a few stores in Sweden. And It started off that we had the sewing machines in the stores because we regulated the length. So we hemmed the jeans for the right length for the customers. And we realized that the staff in the store actually repaired the jeans for their friends and for regular customers. So it started to grow quite organically within the stores. And this started already back in 2008. And when the years passed and when we grow as a company, open more stores, we realized that this is actually an offer we want to officially offer in all of our stores. So in 2012, when we opened our first store in the UK, we also started to call our shops for repair shops to even more communicate around this possibility that we give to our customers to actually have their jeans repaired for free. And when we did this, when we started to do this on a larger scale, we also realized that we needed to have materials or fabrics for the patches we are using in the repair service. So that's also when we started to collect old nudie jeans into the stores. So today we offer a 20% discount on a new pair when customers turn in their old nudie jeans that they don't want anymore. So that's how we get the fabric that we use when we repair other customers' jeans. But also when we had done this for a couple of years and collected a lot of nudie jeans into the stores, we also realized that some of these jeans were actually really beautiful and it was a waste to cut them up and to use the fabric. So that's when we started to sell secondhand nudie jeans in the stores. So then when we also had the small closed loop within each store where we actually collected jeans and we sold them again at that same store. So with time, we've also collected quite a large stock in our warehouse of old nudie jeans, but we haven't really knew what to do with them until a couple of years ago, when also the recycling technologies had developed and we had the possibility to recycle our post-consumer jeans with our already existing fabric suppliers. And the first project we did was actually with a Turkish supplier, a long-term fabric supplier for us. So that's where we started to work with more of a reverse supply chain, actually being able to recycle the garments back to new fabrics and in the end to new garments.
All right, thank you, Lina. I see that this interaction with your clients, but also with your suppliers, has helped you materialize more of these opportunities that you saw coming, opportunities for more circularity in your business. And this is really promising. And that leads me basically to the very initial question we posed. What about the impact of circularity on the textiles sector specifically? And I would like to go back to you, Ferda, for that, to give us more information about how the green entrepreneurs see the circularity of the textile sector. So from a green entrepreneur's perspective, what would you say is the impact of a circular transition in the fashion sector?
Yeah, first of all, I would say that there are lots of opportunities, of course, for entrepreneurs. For most of the circularity-related efforts, there is always a need for innovation, for new types of services, creative designs, etc. We know that circular business models are key for transitioning to a circular economy. And there is really a high potential for business market creation and expansion, especially in textiles and fashion industry. For example, establishing a network of talented and experienced tailors to offer high quality repair and modification services, which are easily accessible online, or applying a pre-ordering system to avoid excess production and to promote actually slow fashion approach, or using natural fibers, eco-friendly dyes, eco-design features, maybe interpreting some traditional techniques and materials as a modern practice to achieve beautiful and at the same time sustainable products. And while we as the circular economy platform we're trying to reach out such initiatives and startups and make them more involved and visible in the circular transition efforts, our path crossed with MedWaves. a couple of years ago, and we decided to collaborate for preparing a guide for circular business opportunities and how businesses can lead the way to sustainable fashion. We focus not only Turkey, but also South Mediterranean countries, targeting all relevant businesses, actually irrespective of their size, but we particularly considered entrepreneurs and startups. And in this study, we examined the circular economy strategies, business models in detail, specifically for fashion industry, including also the business model canvas studies for each business model, and also including case studies of 20 companies from different parts of the world. Then we assess the challenges and drivers, opportunities in the region, taking into consideration the local traits as well. If I would speak of drivers and opportunities as a part of the impact, I would first underline the increasing demand for sustainable clothing, which is actually fostering the industry transformation at global level. This includes increasing consumer demands for lower cost and flexible options, also, and increasing interest in resale and rental markets, especially the potential in young people for adopting more sustainable ways to dress or shop. We can also take the advantage of local cultural traits and existing capacities, the traditions, traditional vocations, capabilities, also the existence of relevant raw materials, different types of raw materials, and existing infrastructures. As a significant driver, we can consider the high potential for waste reduction and for obtaining economic benefits. As we all know, there is a high amount of industrial waste available and high costs are associated with their management. So circular initiatives can provide good solutions for this. Technologies
Right.
and technologies and
I begin to understand the message you're passing is basically that there is a business case. There is a business case, and I think that this also couples the message that we got previously from Elena, where we saw that these incremental changes in the way that the business operates can actually create benefits, economic benefits, which are probably also sustainable if we judge by the what we learned or what we heard about from you now. But I'm wondering if beyond the business case and the financial or economic benefits, are there also some social implications? And Esther, you're working on the jobs initiative, circular jobs initiative. Maybe you have some information about that for us.
Yeah, thank you for the question, because I think it's a really important one. And I've been really pleased to hear in all of the sessions of the last 2 days here at the World Circular Economy Forum in Kigali that job creation, inclusion, just transition, and entrepreneurship have been really part of the mainstream dialogue. And indeed, we're talking about rapid and bold transformation of our value chains, which means we've got an opportunity to really change the way that people live and work and design them in ways that work for people. But I think it's also important to highlight, perhaps in a room of largely advocates and people that are largely won over to the idea of the circular economy, is that as well as the opportunities that are there around job creation, access to training, entrepreneurship, and critically improving the quality of jobs, these benefits aren't necessarily given, and they won't come about automatically with the introduction of circular strategies. So there are trade-offs and blind spots, as we discussed initially in this morning's session, on global trade and circular economy, that we really need to address in order to overcome lots of the existing issues that we see in the textiles industry, particularly related to working conditions. So policies and business models really need to be designed in ways that proactively promote and safeguard the rights and opportunities of workers at all stages of the value chain. So really thinking of all of the clusters of workers, all the entrepreneurs, as Vera was introducing us to try and avoid the unintended, often hidden negative consequences that can come from scaling up new initiatives in the fashion industry. So if we think about strategies to reduce consumption, so the overall volume of garments and preventing the waste textiles mountain, as we often call it at Circular Economy. So we need to think about the negative impacts or the potential negative impacts where garments are currently being produced. So we've heard over the last couple of days from one of the entrepreneurs based in South Africa, the founder of Reworn, who also spoke about the hub of textiles production in the Western Cape, which creates a lot of GDP and employment. And indeed, Bangladesh, we heard from a representative this morning, 80% of exports from Bangladesh currently are garments, and it creates 4 million jobs in the country. So it creates a picture of the number of jobs and livelihoods that we need to take into consideration as we introduce new strategies and look at changing the way that they operate and how countries are working together across these value chains. And then if we look at reducing consumption, so really trying to capture the offcuts from production cycles and feed them back into new products, we really need to be designing these with entrepreneurs, but also with the informal sector, so that they aren't undercut or pushed out of the value chain where they are currently playing a role. So, for example, we know there's many cases of informal sectors that sell the offcuts currently that are discarded by brands or larger companies operating within communities, and so sell these onto the market for a price where it's upcycled or downcycled. So where new business models are being introduced that might mean that there are less of these offcuts or that they're directed somewhere else, we need to think about compensation and really supporting informal workers, but also entrepreneurs with the training to comply with new business models that are coming in. And I know we can go into this in more depth, but so essentially there are many positive benefits. I want to emphasize that, but there also are unforeseen negative impacts if we don't consciously build them into our strategies so that we can really boost existing good practice as well. Great.
Thank you, Esther. So you refer to both positive and negative side, and I understand that Ferda was also providing us a good picture of the positive business case, or let's say positive economic benefits from circularity. But these businesses that are trying to apply and implement circularity measures, they are probably in need of support. Elina, in your case, in the case of Nudie Jeans, did you have any support in promoting circularity? I know that your company has been involved also in SwitchMed programs.
Yes, exactly. So what I talked about before was the recycling of the post-consumer collected jeans, but we've also had a project in Tunisia with one of our largest Tunisian manufacturers or denim manufacturers, where we have for many years stocked a lot of the second choices garments, so the garments that have been sorted out in the quality check. We have asked the Denim Authority to save these until we found a circular way of using them. So we had a large stock there. We were trying to find a different kind of solutions for using these, and we got contact with a Tunisian fabric supplier called Swift. So we started to look at this possibility, and at the same time, we also got in contact with UNIDO and SwitchMed program and their pilot of mapping different kind of textile waste flows within Tunisia. So we got the possibility of actually starting this project at the same time as their pilot. So they also have mapped and studied all of these processes that we started to work with. And it was very valuable for us to get this possibility to collaborate with UNIDO, because we realized we gained a lot of new insights for the process. First of all, we understood all of the different process steps, because there are always, of course, more details to this when you actually start to dive into the details than what we can first imagine. But we also got a better understanding of the cost perspective of doing this work, and also to map and understand the waste flow of the recycling process. And that was really interesting. Of course, we knew that we needed to take away all of the seams, the pockets, the trims from the denims before they were able to be shredded down to fibers again and to be recycled. But within the study and the report that we got from UNIDO and SwitchMed, we also realized all of the waste happening within the shredding process, within the spinning process, and then of course the cutting waste from reproducing these garments again. And in the end, we could see that only 48% of the weight of the garments were in fact recycled. And this is important for us to understand, because we need to continue to talk to our suppliers about what they can do to decrease their waste flows in the first way, because we know that the fabric suppliers that we are working with, they are recycling their spinning waste, for example, into their processes again. And we know that our manufacturing supplier is selling their cutting waste to recyclers to upscale or downscale it again. So we know that they already have some solutions for this, but we also need to be more effective in the actual production to reduce the waste. So we got a lot of good and important insights into the process while working with UNIDO and SwitchMed. And another aspect that I think is important to mention here is that we thought it was very important to be able to close the loop within Tunisia. And this is also something that was confirmed within the report that we received, because reducing the use of long transports within the supply chain in general, but also, of course, when you work with the reverse supply chain, is very important to reduce the impact connected to transport, so the CO2 emissions. So in the end, this has been a very successful project for us. To date, we have been doing 4 batches with 20,000 meters of new fabrics made with 20% recycled nudie jeans into them. So yeah, this is something that we can continue to work with and have as a standard process now.
Thank you, Elina. Very, very happy to see that you got a real support there and you made it work well for your business. But I take another message also from what you told us, and that is that there was a multiplier effect. So the support to you actually supported your supply chain and your suppliers. So we've got SwitchMed, we've got the Switch to Circular Economy Value Chains projects also supporting SMEs. Gaëtan, are there other projects? Is there any other type of EU support on the ground beyond the Switch initiatives?
Yes, you mentioned a few of those that are represented in the panel. The EU is, as I was mentioning, trying to mirror the internal policies with also support externally and supporting a range of initiatives on sustainable and circular textiles throughout the world. The switch to circular value chain is one of the projects that Ati talked about. The SwitchMed is another one that Elina is involved in the Mediterranean region, with actions also in Morocco and Egypt and 8 different countries in the region. Let me also mention another project that is called INTEX, Innovative Business Practices and Economic Models in the Textile Value Chain, that we're working on with UNEP. This is a 3-year project that started in September 2020, and that is looking at the science-business policy interface to try to support the implementation of life cycle approaches with both at the global and at the pilot level in 3 countries, in Kenya, South Africa, and Tunisia, notably. And this is a project that aims at providing some evidence on the different type of sustainable economic models that exist in the textile value chain, then supporting some SMEs in implementing the eco-innovation approach that UNEP has been developed, but also the environmental footprints that the Commission has developed. So that's among the others. And we also have a range of more local actions in Asia under the Switch Asia project. So, for example, in the Central Asia region, we have this ROOTSIS project in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan that is looking at the silk value chain, supporting some actors to develop a regional strategy for making the whole value chain more sustainable, but also providing some vocational training and advisory capacity for the institutions, and trying to introduce some product labeling. We have some projects in India also that are looking at the leather value chain that we know is a very environmental and friendly one, with a lot of chemicals being used. So to reduce the level of waste and to encourage the recycling and reuse of waste in the cotton sector also in India. So these are just a few examples of some of the projects, and they all kind of contribute to the main priorities of the European Green Deal, which are to reduce the over pollution, to try to promote more circular system design of products, and to reduce significantly waste and use waste as a resources, but also looking at what was mentioned, the importance of looking at within the objective of poverty reduction and social and better employment opportunities that it can provide, and of course the health dimension for the workers. So keeping this holistic approach also in promoting a more sustainable circular value chain.
Thank you, Gaetan. So a holistic approach, a proliferation of projects supporting circularity in the textile sector. For those interested, I would encourage you to visit the switchtogreen.eu webpage. There are plenty of information on these initiatives. You can dig out even more about additional support by the European Union to the green and circular economy. Right, as we get closer to the end of our session, I would like to look towards the future. And I think that's something also that the audience would like to have, a clearer understanding of what are the opportunities for changing the mindsets of businesses, changing the mindsets of the countries, but also at the same time supporting them towards circularity. Elena, let me start with you. UNIDO Jeans works with recycled materials, you told us, but is also one of the few companies that is addressing what we call the post-sale phase, meaning how the consumers use their products. So what would be required to convince other businesses as well to follow up on your business model and to focus on the post-sale consumer needs with a view to extending the lifetime and the use of products?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think we need to start to focus on creating garments that people continue to use for a long time, and not to be part of these very quick fast fashion trends where things are discarded just after a couple of times you use the garments. So we need to focus on making more timeless garments, but they can still be special, of course, but to do the garments that people want to keep. And that starts with the design decision. And for us, it has been very important to increase the affectional value that the users have for their garments. And that is also, I believe, built up with time, because the more you wear a garment, the more you love it, the more you also care for it in the end. And connected to this is also the cost of garments, because if you, as a customer, invest a larger amount of money in your garments, which in the end is also reflecting the real cost of a proper production, you will probably also care for it more than if you have bought something that was very cheap and by effect also will have maybe not a very good production, and you can just throw that away because it wasn't an investment for you. So we are really trying to connect the user phase and the wearing of our garments with an increased value from a monetary perspective, but also from a sort of affectional connection to the garments that we use. And of course, you working with denim and jeans is quite a good product from this perspective. And we, within UNIDO Jeans, we also promote the use of dry denim, so non-wash denim. And the more you wear the jeans, the more you tear and wear them and wash them, the more they will also create sort of a map of the journey that you have lived in your jeans. So that would also increase the affectional value that you have towards your garments. So this is how we see it and how we work with it. But I also want to add that from a climate perspective and from a business perspective, because we have set climate targets, we are creating a action plan on how we are going to reach our climate targets and to reduce the emissions connected to our production. We also need to see quite a a large decoupling of our financial growth and the use of natural resources. So to produce garments that people want to use for a long time, to sell secondhand garments, that is actually the future of our business, because that's how we can continue to grow as a business while still not increasing the use of virgin materials. So it also is an important aspect into this, and maybe something that more companies can also think about, because more and more companies are setting climate targets and are trying to find the way forward to reach the target as well.
Thank you, Elina. We have some fashion designers and textile entrepreneurs from Rwanda here in the room with us today. I'm pretty confident that your example is inspiring to them as well. We can wait for their reaction towards the end of the session. Further, I turn to you to learn more about what is the case with the green fashion entrepreneurs. What would you believe would be the priority support that they need to be receiving in their circularity efforts?
Mm-hmm. For this, I think we can first look at the major challenges that they are facing with. For example, immature local markets and lack of local demands for circular products, sustainable products. Also, lack of skills and expertise, supply chain issues, and also technological and infrastructural needs, especially the insufficient collection, sorting, recycling infrastructures, and requirements for outsourced activities like logistics, maintenance, cleaning, etc. But here I also want to emphasize the communication challenges for businesses and especially for entrepreneurs. I mean, the challenges in communicating the value and benefits of slow fashion, circular design, and circular practices, materials, as well as the communication of the business model itself. Most of the stakeholders in Turkey and also the South Mediterranean countries agreed that the government support for creating circular businesses is quite limited. Referring mainly to insufficient incentives, financial aids, and also permit and license requirements for launching such businesses. So taking all these into consideration, I would say that there are critical roles and responsibilities for governmental organizations, as well as the organizations supporting businesses or interfaces, platforms working especially with businesses. In that regard, I would first underline creating a collaboration environment and collaboration platforms, bringing stakeholders and entrepreneurs together. And additionally, dedicated training, technical support programs, guides, circular economy related guides, good practice examples, improvement of local infrastructures, of course, providing financing tools and incentives, better integrating circular economy in R&D, innovation, competitiveness programs and supports. Also focusing on regulations, supportive regulations. One of them could be extended producer responsibility, which was already mentioned for textiles especially. I think these would all help value chain actors, including entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Ferda. I was happy to hear the word logistics in what you said before, because logistics is also linked to your last message, is linked to the value chains. And that gives me the opportunity to turn to Hattie and Esther, who are working with circular economy in the Switch to Circular Economy Value Chains project, and basically working with the value chains. What more could we actually do to support textiles and fashion in the value chains to become circular? But are there also some specific solutions and considerations we should be taking seriously?
Pass the mic. Yes, I think that, Alexander, in your introduction, we also talked about the fact that the textiles industry is really a poster child for the linear economy, from the vast resources used to produce the clothing to the vast volumes of clothing that we produce, of which only about 1% gets cycled back into the economy. So I think we also have to match the scale of the problem with the scale of the solution. And our approach to circular economy, which is also what we're applying through the Switch to Circular Economy Value Chains project, is twofold. Ultimately, we're looking to reduce the current waste mountain by building the data and the infrastructure to valorize textiles at end of life. But crucially, we're also focusing on being extremely proactive in preventing the waste mountain in the first place. And I think throughout all of these presentations, we've heard repeatedly building the capacity, designing for reuse from the beginning, and really bringing this enabling environment of stakeholders together. Because when we look at global value chains, when we look at the vast size of the textiles industry, we're looking at policy and regulatory reform, we're looking at access to finance, we're looking at building capacity, we have to ensure a just transition. It is extremely complex. But also in listening to Alina talk about the story of nudie jeans, I think one of the biggest opportunities the textiles industry has is that it's extremely good at storytelling. And I think that we shouldn't underestimate the ability of brands like Nudie and others that are also doing similar things. I mean, of course, we all know what Patagonia is doing, but also to what's going on in the Rwandan ecosystem. I think at the beginning of the World Circular Economy Forum, we heard from some local entrepreneurs. It was so refreshing to also bring the story down to the very local level and make the circular economy transition extremely tangible. So I think what we all have to bear in mind when we're working on the switch to circular economy value chains and we're keeping the narrative high level, we have to always make sure that we're talking about the role of the SMEs, the role of the informal sector, the role of policy, the role of financing, and bringing that narrative together in a very cohesive story. And I would love to hear, Alina, more from Nudie in terms of motivating other brands to take the bold steps you have. And onto you for social.
Yes, well, you've covered a few there. But yeah, I just want to emphasize the importance of making sure that the social and financial benefits work for everyone. So not just seeing leadership on circular strategies being down to the bigger companies and the wealthier countries, but actually really looking at how to bring entrepreneurs, these case studies to life, how to involve them in the design of new strategies and to ensure the right social protection and conditions are in place. And indeed, we've talked a lot about enabling conditions over the last few days. We're back. We've talked a lot about enabling conditions over the last few days. So it's really important that we understand what is and isn't working for companies of all different sizes that are trying to scale up their ambitions in the circular economy so we can promote positive social impacts. Understand what the barriers are that are holding entrepreneurs back, be it finance. We talked a lot about that the last couple of days, machinery, knowledge, compliance with new policies that are coming in. What training informal workers need to gain and maintain access to the materials that they work with. And also the topic of reshoring was highlighted earlier by a partner joining from Bangladesh. We really need to think, do we necessarily want to be reshoring these industries away from countries where there's deep expertise and skills about how to create beautiful products efficiently? So really helping those countries to build the diversity of their product market, as was mentioned earlier, and really become competitive as well.
Thank you, Hattie and Esther. I can see that there are plenty of needs, multiple needs for support, and staying into the value chain part of textiles and fashion. I can't help myself but bringing into the discussion what the previous session called the elephant in the room, and that is trade. So Gaetan, is trade another entry point for the EU's circularity support actions?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, the approach of the European Green Deal is really a holistic one, and of course trade needs to be part of it, but this whole promotion of circular value chain in the textile sector is you have a need to use basically from our hand the whole of the EU toolbox into promoting this. It includes, for example, the policy dialogue that we have with third countries on the regulatory measures that we're taking. We have a lot of engagement, notably on the sustainable fashion and textile in the policy dialogue that we have with a range of countries, including in the context of the G20, for example, where there is a resource sufficiency dialogue, where there have been a lot of discussion on textile. Of course, all the support through the development cooperation that I've been mentioning, a few of the projects is an important tool. The research and innovation cooperation is also a very important one. We have this Horizon Europe program, for example, and all the business-to-business relations also between EU and other stakeholders. These are important elements. But the trade policies is of course central. Esther, you mentioned some countries that basically have 80% of their exports to the EU, like Bangladesh, that are garments, and this is a very powerful tool that we can use also in the promotion of more sustainable chains. There is a commitment on the EU side to better link this trade policy with the sustainability agenda, to have a commitment within our trade agreements on sustainability requirements. And I mean, I started by mentioning all the regulatory measure that the EU is taking in terms of, and of course this will impact the trade, the rules that will put to be able to put a product on the market is likely to need adaptation and cooperation with third countries to be able to comply with them, and we're willing to keep supporting these countries on this adaptation. But yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Gaetan. Well, we saw that there are multiple needs, but there are also, thankfully, quite a few opportunities for support. And the EU, as Gaetan just said, has an impressive toolbox to mobilize for that purpose. We still have some time before the end of the session, and I would like to turn to the audience that is present here. If there are any questions to raise, any questions to our panel? If not, I would like to summarize the main outcomes we heard of the discussion. We heard convincing arguments, I would say, that there is indeed a business case for the circular economy in the textiles and fashion sector. It became clear, I think, from what we discussed, that this business case is very much shaped and influenced by policy. And luckily, we have a leader or an aspired leader in this field, and that is the European Union with its new circular economy action plan. This is crucial. This is crucial because we heard that there is a need to maximize the benefits at the level of at the social level, at the economic and the environmental level, and we need support for that. We need support in terms of technical assistance. We need support in terms of infrastructure, in terms of new ideas also that can mobilize reverse logistics and other business models. We need an easier access to finance as well. And well, we luckily we're happy to have Gaëtan Ducrot from the European Commission services here to confirm that there will be a continuation in the EU policy developments that at the same time means that there will be a continuous influence of changes into the textiles and fashion sector. We're very happy to have with us representatives of the circular economy working with the circular economy value chains project as well, Esther and Hattie. You conveyed your experiences from the project and how we can work along the value chains to maximize the benefits there as well and minimize the negative impacts. There is hope that we can actually get this message across to a much larger number of SMEs. That's Ferda's experience also brought into the discussion. We're talking about experience in Turkey, but also experience in in the southern part of the Mediterranean region, and very much linked to EU initiatives like SwitchMed. But we also saw that this is not just a theoretical discussion. It's not just about a pilot action, but it's also a real case. We have a business case with us today. Nutty Jeans and Elena managed to explain to us how the circular economy business model there works. I'd like to thank you all very much for your attention to our session and end by hoping that we can continue our circularity actions or circular economy actions. As we heard before, is two different aspects: circular economy actions within the textiles and fashion sector. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the Accelerator sessions of the day.
For those colleagues who are going to stay with us and they have registered for these events, we have lunch that will be served in the restaurant downstairs. Please pick up a coupon from my colleague, Daniele, who's at the entrance, who you probably met when you first registered. He's going to give you your coupon with which you can go to the restaurant and join us for lunch. Thank you.
Basically